My name is Hazel. I'm 29 years old, and I never thought my medical research background would help me expose a criminal in my own family. What should have been a joyful celebration of my brother Logan's 5th wedding anniversary turned into a nightmare when I noticed something odd about my stepmother Diana. She kept insisting I finish my drink with unusual persistence. I felt uncomfortable, but I smiled through it for Logan's sake. I never imagined that a trip to the restroom would change everything. If you're watching this, drop a comment telling me where you're from and hit subscribe to join me on this wild journey. Family celebrations were always special to us, even more so after we lost Mom. Logan and his wife Abigail were the golden couple of our family, high school sweethearts who managed to keep their love strong through college and beyond. Their 5th anniversary celebration was a milestone we all wanted to honor properly. My brother Logan had always been my protector growing up. 3 years older than me, he was the one who taught me to ride a bike, helped me with school projects, and chased away boys who broke my heart in high school. When he met Abigail in their junior year, I knew immediately she was different from his previous girlfriends. She had this warmth about her that made everyone feel welcome. I gained not just a sister-in-law, but a genuine friend when they married. Our mother, Evelyn, had been the heart of our family until cancer took her 6 years ago. She was a kindergarten teacher who somehow managed to bring that nurturing energy home every day despite dealing with 25 5-year-olds. Her diagnosis came suddenly, and within 8 months she was gone. Our family fractured in the aftermath, with my father Frank retreating into his grief and work, while Logan and I tried to support each other through the loss. "Your mother would have loved to see you two thriving," Dad would say on rare occasions when he opened up about Mom. He remained single for 3 years after her death, throwing himself into his engineering firm until Logan and I worried about his health. Then Diana entered the picture. Dad met her at a charity fundraiser for cancer research, which seemed like fate at the time. Diana was sophisticated, attentive, and seemed to understand his grief perfectly. She was a widow herself, having lost her husband to a heart attack, or so she claimed. Their romance moved quickly, and within 6 months, they were married in a small ceremony. "She makes me happy again," Dad told us when we expressed concern about the rushed timeline. "Sometimes when you just know." At first, Diana was everything our family needed. She encouraged Dad to reconnect with old friends, took interest in my medical research career, and even helped plan Logan and Abigail's anniversary parties. But something shifted after the first year of marriage. Small changes at first, like Dad suddenly dropping his Sunday golf game that he'd enjoyed for decades, or selling his beloved vintage car collection because Diana thought it was impractical. "I just want what's best for your father," became her common refrain whenever Logan or I questioned these changes. Her smile never quite reached her eyes when she said it. I started noticing how she would subtly undermine Dad's decisions, making him second-guess himself until he eventually deferred to her judgment. When I tried discussing my concerns with Dad, he brushed them off. "Hazel, you're imagining things. Diana only wants what's best for this family." For Logan's 5th anniversary with Abigail, Diana insisted on handling all the arrangements. She booked Vincent's, the most exclusive restaurant in town, requiring reservations months in advance. When I offered to help, she politely but firmly declined. "I want everything to be perfect for Logan and Abigail," she said with that practiced smile of hers. "Besides, you're so busy with your research. I wouldn't want to burden you." The night of the celebration arrived with perfect weather, a warm spring evening with clear skies. I wore a navy blue dress that Mom had always said brought out my eyes, a small tribute to her absence. When I arrived at the restaurant, the maitre d' escorted me to our private dining room where most of the family had already gathered. Logan rushed over to hug me. "About time you showed up, sis. I was starting to think you got lost in one of your research papers again." Abigail joined him, radiant in a silver cocktail dress. "He's been checking his watch every 5 minutes. You'd think after 5 years of marriage, he'd be less punctual." Our cousin Tiffany was there with her new boyfriend Marcus, while Uncle Warren and Aunt Heather chatted with Dad by the window. Diana stood slightly apart, surveying the room like a general before battle. She wore an expensive-looking red dress that seemed designed to draw attention. Hazel, darling, you finally made it. Diana air-kissed both my cheeks. I was just telling your father we should have sent a car for you. You worked too hard to drive yourself after those long hours at the lab. Something in her tone made it sound like criticism rather than concern, but I smiled and thanked her for organizing the beautiful event. The private dining room was decorated with tasteful flower arrangements and soft lighting that created an intimate atmosphere. As I moved to greet my father, I noticed one of the servers, a young woman with dark hair pulled back in a neat bun, watching our table with unusual interest. When our eyes met, she quickly looked away and busied herself arranging water glasses. I thought little of it at the time, attributing her attention to the exclusive nature of our private dining arrangement. If only I had paid more attention to that first warning sign. The server, whose name tag read Rebecca, would soon play a crucial role in the evening's unexpected turn of events. As everyone settled in for dinner, I noticed that Diana had arranged the seating with place cards. Somehow, I ended up seated between Cousin Tiffany and Uncle Warren, directly across from Diana, and as far from my father as the round table would allow. I thought it would be nice to mix things up, Diana explained when she caught my questioning look. Family dinners are about connecting with everyone, not just sitting in the same arrangements we always do. The first course arrived, a delicate seafood appetizer that Diana had apparently specially selected. When the waiter began to pour wine, Diana stopped him with a gentle touch on his arm. Actually, we'll have the champagne now for the toast, she announced. And Hazel will have the special reserve Merlot. She loves red wine, don't you, dear? I didn't, actually. Red wine gave me migraines, something I'd mentioned to Diana multiple times. I'd prefer white wine, or just water, actually. Diana's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Nonsense. This is a special occasion. The Merlot is exquisite, and I ordered it specifically with you in mind. Rather than create a scene at my brother's celebration, I acquiesced, planning to just leave the wine untouched. Dad, who normally would have remembered my preference for white wine, seemed distracted and didn't come to my aid. Logan stood to offer the first toast, his glass raised high. To my incredible wife, Abigail, who somehow puts up with me day after day. 5 years has flown by, and I fall more in love with you each day. Glasses clinked, and conversation flowed. Diana, however, seemed intent on steering the discussion in specific directions. Whenever I began sharing updates about my research with my father, Diana would interject with a story about something I'd done as a teenager. Did Frank ever tell you about the time Hazel nearly burned down the kitchen trying to make breakfast in bed for her mother? Diana asked Aunt Heather, despite not even knowing me during that period of my life. She's always been so independent, sometimes to a fault. Throughout the meal, I noticed Diana whispering instructions to various servers, her eyes occasionally darting to my still full wine glass. During the main course, when most people were engrossed in their meals, I saw her slip something to a waiter, who nodded and walked away. Minutes later, the same waiter returned with a fresh glass of what appeared to be the same red wine, placing it beside my barely touched first glass. Your wine seemed a bit warm, Diana explained smoothly. I asked them to bring you a properly chilled glass. That's thoughtful, I replied, growing increasingly uncomfortable with her fixation on my drink. As dessert menus were distributed, Diana leaned across the table. Hazel, you've hardly touched your wine. Is something wrong with it? I went to great lengths to select that vintage. I'm just pacing myself, I said, trying to keep my tone light. I have an early meeting tomorrow. Diana's eyes narrowed slightly. One glass won't hurt. Besides, we're celebrating Logan and Abigail. Surely your work can wait for one night. The conversation shifted to family matters, specifically my grandfather's estate, which had been in a trust since his passing 2 years ago. Frank and I were just discussing making some changes to the family trust, Diana mentioned casually. With Logan and Abigail potentially starting a family soon, and Hazel so focused on her career rather than settling down, it might make sense to restructure things. I nearly choked on my water. This was the first I'd heard of any plans to alter the family trust, and Diana had no legal right to involve herself in those decisions. That's not something we need to discuss tonight, My father interjected, looking uncomfortable. It was the first time he'd contradicted Diana all evening. Diana smiled tightly and changed the subject, turning to Abigail. Speaking of family planning, any news to share with us tonight? As Abigail blushed and explained they were still enjoying time as a couple before having children, I noticed Rebecca, the server I'd spotted earlier, watching our table again. This time, her gaze was fixed specifically on Diana, her expression concerned. Diana, meanwhile, had circled back to my untouched wine. Hazel, you really should try this. It cost over $300 a bottle. The pressure was becoming unbearable. I excused myself to use the restroom, needing a moment away from Diana's attention. Why don't you take your wine with you? Diana suggested with unusual insistence. It would be a shame to waste it, and you can enjoy it without rushing. I'll be right back, I said, deliberately leaving both glasses untouched on the table. As I walked away, I caught another glimpse of Rebecca's face. She was staring at Diana with what could only be described as suspicion, and when she saw me heading to the restroom, she began moving in the same direction. The elegant restroom at Vincent's offered a momentary sanctuary from the tension at our family table. I leaned against the marble counter, trying to make sense of Diana's strange behavior. Her insistence about the wine, her pointed comments about the family trust, the way she kept undermining me in subtle ways that others might not notice. Was I overreacting, or was something sinister happening beneath the surface of our celebration? I splashed cool water on my wrists, a trick my mother had taught me to calm down when stressed. The door opened, and in the mirror, I saw Rebecca, the server who had been watching our table. She glanced under the stalls to confirm we were alone before approaching me with an urgency that sent a chill down my spine. "I'm sorry to intrude," she said in a hushed voice, "but I needed to speak with you privately. Your stepmother has put something in your drink." The words hung in the air between us, so absurd that my first reaction was disbelief. "Excuse me?" "I saw her," Rebecca continued, her voice steady despite the shocking accusation. "When everyone was distracted by the dessert menus, she added some kind of powder to your new glass of wine. She was very careful, but I was clearing plates nearby and saw the whole thing." My mind raced through the events of the evening, Diana's insistence about the wine, the way she kept pressuring me to drink it, even suggesting I take it with me to the restroom. Why would she do that? I asked, still struggling to process this information. "And why are you telling me this? You could lose your job." Rebecca's expression softened slightly. "Before working here, I was a pharmacy technician for 5 years. I recognized suspicious behavior around drinks. The way she kept watching your glass, how she created a distraction to add something, how she's been so insistent that you drink it. These are red flags I've been trained to notice." Memories suddenly flooded back, seemingly unrelated incidents that now took on new meaning. Dad's unexplained stomach bug that lasted 3 days after he and Diana had argued about selling his vacation cabin. My own mysterious illness after dinner where Diana had insisted on pouring me a special tea she'd prepared. The family dog suddenly dying 6 months ago from what the vet called unknown toxins. What should I do? I asked, my research background already calculating possibilities. I should call the police, right? Rebecca shook her head. Without proof, it's your word against hers. She could claim I'm making it up or that I misinterpreted what I saw. Then what do you suggest? Swap the glasses, Rebecca said simply. When you go back, find a way to switch your glass with hers. If nothing happens, no harm done. But if she did put something in your drink, the implications were clear. If Diana had tampered with my drink and then consumed it herself, the effects would prove her guilt. I could cause a small distraction, Rebecca offered. Spill water or something similar. During the confusion, you could make the switch. My heart pounded as I considered the plan. Part of me still couldn't believe my stepmother would actually try to drug me at a family celebration. What would be her motive? Yet another part of me, the part that had been uneasy around Diana for years, knew this was exactly the confirmation I'd been seeking. She's been isolating my father from the family, changing his behavior, I said, more to myself than to Rebecca. And recently she's been asking a lot of questions about my grandfather's trust, which Dad and I co-control? Rebecca nodded grimly. People who poison others usually have financial motives or want to control their victims. I took a deep breath, making my decision. I'll do it. I'll swap the glasses. But I need to be careful. Diana notices everything. Together, we quickly formulated a plan. Rebecca would create a small distraction by accidentally dropping a serving tray near our table. During the commotion, I would swap my full wine glass with Diana's. What if she doesn't drink it? I asked. Based on what I've seen tonight, she'll be so satisfied that you finally took a sip that she'll likely drink from her own glass in celebration, Rebecca reasoned. Just make sure you only pretend to drink yours. I nodded, steeling myself for what was to come. Thank you for warning me. Not many people would take that risk for a stranger. Rebecca's expression darkened. My aunt was slowly poisoned by her husband for 3 years before anyone realized what was happening. By then, she had permanent liver damage. I promised myself I'd never ignore the signs again. As we prepared to leave the restroom, I grabbed Rebecca's arm. If this goes wrong somehow, or if nothing happens, I want you to know that I believe you. And I'm grateful. She nodded, her eyes serious. Just be careful. People who do this kind of thing can be unpredictable when cornered. I returned to the table with new awareness, seeing Diana's solicitous smile in an entirely different light. The celebration continued around me, but now it felt like I was watching a play where only I had read the true ending to the script. My wine glasses sat untouched where I'd left them, Diana's eyes immediately darting to them as I took my seat. Everything all right, Hazel? She asked with feigned concern. You were gone quite a while. Everything's fine, I replied, forcing a smile. Just needed a moment to freshen up. As I settled back into my seat, I prepared myself for what would either be a revelation of attempted poisoning or a terrible misunderstanding. Either way, nothing about this family celebration would ever be the same. Returning to the table with my newfound knowledge felt surreal. The cheerful conversations, the clinking of silverware against fine china, Logan and Abigail's affectionate glances, all continued as before, but now I viewed everything through a lens of suspicion. Diana's welcoming smile seemed sinister. Her solicitous questions about my comfort felt like a predator toying with its prey. There you are, Diana said as I sat down. We were about to send a search party. Your wine is getting lonely. Everyone laughed politely at her joke, while my stomach twisted with anxiety. The 2 wine glasses still sat at my place setting, one barely touched and the other full, potentially laced with whatever substance Diana had added. Logan stood up, champagne flute in hand. Since everyone's back, I'd like to propose another toast. To family, both the ones we're born with and the ones we choose. Without all of you, these 5 years wouldn't have been nearly as meaningful. As everyone reached for their glasses, Rebecca peered with a bottle of champagne to refill the flutes. She moved around the table efficiently until she reached the space between Diana and me. As planned, she fumbled with the bottle, causing it to tip precariously. Oh, she exclaimed, the bottle wobbling in her hand. It didn't spill, but the near miss caused everyone to gasp and turn toward her. In that moment of distraction, I swiftly switched my full, potentially drugged wine glass with Diana's nearly empty champagne flute, sliding each into the other's place with practiced precision my years of laboratory work had perfected. I am so sorry, Rebecca apologized profusely, drawing everyone's attention away from my actions. That was completely unprofessional. No harm done, my father said kindly. Diana, however, seemed irritated by the interruption. Perhaps you should let someone else handle the champagne if you're having difficulty. Rebecca nodded contritely and finished pouring, her eyes briefly meeting mine to confirm the switch had been successful. As Logan finished his toast, everyone raised their glasses. I lifted what had been Diana's champagne flute, now in my place, and brought it to my lips without drinking. Diana, meanwhile, picked up what she believed was her fresh champagne, but was actually my tainted wine glass. Hazel, you should really try your wine, Diana insisted again, eyeing my untouched wine glasses. I had them bring the second glass because I worried the first might have warmed too much. I'll get to it, I promised vaguely. But right now, I'm enjoying the champagne for the toast. Diana's eyes narrowed slightly, but Logan interrupted by asking her about the special dessert she had arranged. As Diana began explaining the elaborate chocolate creation she'd commissioned, she absently sipped from what she thought was her champagne glass, but was actually my tainted wine. I watched carefully, trying not to stare too obviously. Diana took another sip, then another, seemingly unaware that she was drinking wine instead of champagne. The conversation continued around us, with Abigail sharing a funny story about their honeymoon and Aunt Heather asking about their plans for a delayed anniversary trip. Approximately 20 minutes later, I noticed the first sign that something was wrong. Diana's speech slurred slightly as she answered a question from Uncle Warren. She touched her forehead, looking momentarily confused. "Are you all right, honey?" my father asked, placing his hand on hers. "I'm fine," Diana insisted, though her words ran together. "Just a bit warm in here." She reached for her water glass but misjudged the distance, nearly knocking it over. My father steadied her hand, concern evident on his face. "Diana, you look pale," Aunt Heather observed. "Maybe we should get some fresh air." Diana attempted to stand but swayed dangerously, gripping the table for support. "Something's wrong," she slurred, her eyes unable to focus properly. "I feel strange." My father stood immediately, putting his arm around her for support. "I'm getting the manager. You need medical attention." As Dad helped Diana to a nearby chair, her condition deteriorated rapidly. Her movements became increasingly uncoordinated, her speech nearly incomprehensible. The celebratory mood evaporated, replaced by confused concern. "Did she have that much to drink?" Logan whispered to me, perplexed by the sudden change in our stepmother. "She only had a few sips of champagne that I saw," I replied truthfully, though I knew it wasn't champagne that was affecting her. The restaurant manager, a professional-looking woman named Melissa, arrived quickly. "What seems to be the problem?" "My wife," my father explained, panic edging his voice. "She was fine 1 minute, and now she can barely stand. I think she needs an ambulance." As Melissa called for medical assistance, Diana's confusion turned to anger. She pointed a shaky finger around the table, her gaze unable to fix on any one person. "Someone did this," she slurred accusingly. "The restaurant, bad food, poisoned me." Rebecca hovered nearby, and I could see her internal struggle. If she revealed what she'd witnessed now, Diana might be treated properly, but we'd lose the opportunity to prove what she'd done. I made a quick decision, pulling Logan aside while the others attended to Diana. "Logan, I need to tell you something important, and I need you to trust me without asking questions right now." My brother's expression was serious as he nodded. "What is it?" "Diana put something in my wine. The server Rebecca saw her do it and warned me. We switched glasses, and now she's experiencing the effects of whatever she intended for me." Logan's eyes widened in shock. "Are you serious? Why would she?" "I don't know for certain," I interrupted, "but I suspect it has to do with the family trust. We need to make sure they test her for drugs at the hospital, but we can't let Diana know we're suspicious yet." My brother's face hardened with resolve. Though he clearly had 1,000 questions, he trusted me enough to act. He immediately approached the manager. "My sister is a medical researcher," he explained to Melissa. "She thinks my stepmother might be having a reaction to medication or potentially something in her drink. Could you make sure all the glasses from our table are secured for testing?" Melissa nodded, immediately instructing staff not to clear our table. By this time, Diana was barely conscious, slumped in her chair with my father holding her upright, his face ashen with worry. The paramedics arrived within minutes, quickly assessing Diana's condition. Her blood pressure was dangerously low, her pupils constricted to pinpoints. "Has she taken any medications today?" one paramedic asked. "Just her usual blood pressure pill this morning," my father answered, his voice shaking. "She was perfectly fine until just now." As they transferred Diana to a stretcher, the police arrived, standard procedure when someone potentially ingested an unknown substance at a public establishment. Detective Cameron, a stern-faced woman with practical short hair, began taking preliminary statements while Diana was loaded into the ambulance. Anyone who saw what happened or noticed anything unusual should remain, Detective Cameron instructed. We'll need statements from everyone. My father left with Diana in the ambulance, torn between confusion and panic. The rest of us remained behind in the now silent private dining room, the half-eaten anniversary cake a sad reminder of how quickly celebration had turned to crisis. Rebecca approached Detective Cameron, her posture straight despite her obvious nervousness. I have information that might be relevant to what happened, she said firmly. As Rebecca shared what she had witnessed, the detective's expression remained impassive, though she took detailed notes. The manager brought the surveillance footage from the dining room, which would hopefully show Diana's actions. Our family celebration had dissolved into a crime scene, with evidence being collected and statements taken. Abigail clung to Logan's arm, her anniversary effectively ruined. Uncle Warren and Aunt Heather whispered together in the corner, occasionally glancing at me with confusion. In the midst of the chaos, I felt a strange mix of vindication and heartbreak. If Rebecca was right, my suspicions about Diana had been justified, but the confirmation would devastate my father. As I prepared to give my statement to Detective Cameron, I wondered if our family would ever recover from what this night had revealed. The hospital waiting room felt like limbo, suspended between the life we knew and whatever reality awaited us once the truth emerged fully. My father paced anxiously, his normally confident posture crumpled with worry. Logan and Abigail sat huddled together on uncomfortable plastic chairs, their anniversary celebration now a distant memory. Uncle Warren had taken Aunt Heather home, but promised to return in the morning. I sat slightly apart, my mind racing with possibilities. What if Rebecca had been mistaken? What if there was some other explanation for Diana's collapse? Despite my suspicions about my stepmother, part of me still hoped for an innocent explanation, if only to spare my father the pain of betrayal. Dr. Patricia Baldwin, the emergency physician handling Diana's case, emerged from the treatment area, her expression grave. Mr. Marshall, I'd like to speak with you about your wife's condition. My father immediately moved toward her. Is Diana all right? What happened to her? She's stabilized, Dr. Baldwin assured him. But I need to ask you some questions. Would you prefer to speak privately? Dad glanced at us. These are my children. Whatever you need to say, you can say in front of them. Dr. Baldwin nodded, consulting her clipboard. The toxicology screen shows a significant amount of benzodiazepines in your wife's system, specifically a drug called Rohypnol. Rohypnol? My father looked confused. I don't understand. Diana doesn't take that medication. It's not typically prescribed in the United States, Dr. Baldwin explained carefully. It's commonly known as a date rape drug because it can cause confusion, impaired coordination, and even unconsciousness when mixed with alcohol. The implications hung heavy in the air. My father's face paled further. Are you suggesting someone drugged my wife at the restaurant? Before Dr. Baldwin could respond, Detective Cameron arrived, nodding professionally to the doctor before addressing us. I've reviewed the security footage from the restaurant and taken statements from the staff and your family members. And, my father demanded, do you know what happened to Diana? Detective Cameron's expression remained neutral. The footage shows some concerning behavior that I'd like to discuss. Additionally, we've tested the wine glasses from your table. She produced her tablet and pulled up a video file. This is from approximately 8:15 this evening. I'd like you to watch carefully. The footage clearly showed our family table from an overhead angle. In the video, everyone was distracted by the dessert menus being distributed. Diana could be seen reaching into her purse, palming something small, and then leaning over to add it to one of the wine glasses at my place setting. The movement was subtle, quick, but unmistakable. My father watched in stunned silence, his expression morphing from confusion to disbelief. That can't be right, he whispered. Diana wouldn't, she couldn't. The wine glass in question tested positive for Rohypnol, Detective Cameron continued. The same substance found in your wife's system. We also found a small packet containing the same drugs in your wife's purse. Logan put his arm around our father's shoulders as he sank heavily into a chair. I don't understand, Dad said, his voice hollow. Why would Diana drug Hazel? I knelt before him, taking his trembling hands in mine. Dad, I think it has something to do with Grandpa's trust. Diana has been asking a lot of questions about it recently, especially about my role as co-trustee. Detective Cameron nodded. We've requested a warrant to search your home and financial records based on this evidence. In cases like this, financial motivation is common. A nurse appeared at the doorway. Mrs. Marshall is awake and asking for her husband. My father stood shakily. I need to see her. I need to hear her explanation. We'll need to question her, Detective Cameron said. But you can see her briefly first. The walk to Diana's room felt like the longest journey of my life. Diana lay in the hospital bed, and in her arm, her carefully applied makeup now smudged and her designer dress replaced with a hospital gown. When she saw us enter, her expression shifted rapidly from relief to wariness. Frank, she said, reaching for my father's hand. Thank goodness you're here. Something was wrong with the champagne at that restaurant. We should sue them. My father didn't take her hand. Diana, they tested your system. You had Rohypnol in your blood, the same drug you put in Hazel's wine glass. Diana's eyes widened, darting between all of us. What are you talking about? I would never do such a thing. They have you on video, Logan said coldly, adding something to Hazel's drink. And they found more of the drug in your purse. Diana's facade cracked, her expression hardening as she realized she was caught. This is ridiculous. I'm being framed. Hazel has never liked me. She's probably behind this somehow. Mrs. Marshall, Detective Cameron stepped forward. We have video evidence of your actions, the drug in your purse, and multiple witness statements. I advise you to be truthful now, as it may impact how your case proceeds. Diana's panicked gaze fixed on my father. Frank, you can't believe this. After everything we've been through together, how can you think I would do something like this? My father's voice was steady despite the pain evident in his eyes. I saw the video, Diana. I saw you put something in Hazel's drink. I just need to know why. Why would you try to hurt my daughter? Something in Diana seemed to snap. Her pleading expression transformed into a cold mask. Your precious daughter has been standing in my way from the beginning, always watching me, questioning me, making you doubt me. And that family trust, with its ridiculous dual control between you and her. Do you have any idea how frustrating it's been trying to access those funds? The raw truth of her words seemed to physically strike my father. He took a step back, bumping into the wall behind him. So, it was about money, he said quietly. All of it, from the beginning. Not just money, Diana spat. Control. Your daughter has too much influence over you and your decisions. I needed her out of the way. Out of the way? I repeated, horrified. What exactly did you plan to do once I was drugged? Diana's smile was chilling.
Nothing permanent.
Just enough to make you seem unstable, perhaps suggest you were mixing medication with alcohol. Frank would have been so worried about you, he might have reconsidered your role in managing the family finances. And the other incidents? I pressed. Dad's mysterious illness after you argued about the cabin? Our dog's unexplained death. Diana's eyes narrowed. You can't prove anything. Detective Cameron stepped forward. Actually, with this confession and the evidence we've gathered, we have grounds to investigate previous incidents. Mrs. Marshall, you're under arrest for attempted poisoning and assault. As Detective Cameron read Diana her rights, a uniformed officer entered to stand guard in the room. Diana's cold composure finally shattered. Frank, you can't let them do this. I'm your wife, she shrieked. Everything I did was for us, for our future. My father's expression was one of complete devastation. There is no us anymore, Diana. Not after this. As we stepped into the hallway, leaving Diana with the police, Dad's shoulders began to shake with silent sobs. I put my arm around him, leading him to a quiet corner where he could break down in relative privacy. I brought her into our family, he whispered. I trusted her with everything, including your safety. How could I have been so blind? She was very convincing, I said gently. And you were vulnerable after Mom died. She took advantage of that. Logan joined us, his expression grim. The detective wants to search the house tonight. They think Diana might have been planning this for some time. And indeed, she had been. The search of their home revealed a hidden compartment in Diana's closet containing multiple prescription medications, including several that matched the symptoms of my father's previous illnesses. More disturbingly, they found a journal detailing her plans to gradually poison my father once she gained control of his assets, making it appear as though his health was naturally declining. Perhaps most shocking was the discovery that Diana Mitchell wasn't even her real name. Her fingerprints matched those of Margaret Wilson, a woman who had been investigated twice before for suspicious deaths of wealthy spouses, though never charged due to lack of evidence. Both previous husbands had died after changing their wills in her favor, their deaths attributed to natural causes that, in retrospect, matched the effects of the medications found in her possession. As we sat in the police station at 3 a.m, reviewing the evidence with Detective Cameron, the full scope of Diana's deception became clear. She had targeted my father specifically, researching our family and our financial situation before engineering a chance meeting at the charity event. She suspected in at least 2 other similar cases, Detective Cameron explained. But this is the first time we've caught her in the act with clear evidence. My father sat silent through most of the interview, looking years older than he had at the start of the evening. When he finally spoke, his voice was hollow. "I need to know," he said quietly. "Was any of it real? Did she ever actually care about me at all?" Detective Cameron's expression softened slightly. "In my experience, Mr. Marshall, people like this aren't capable of genuine attachment. They mimic emotions they don't actually feel to manipulate their targets." As dawn broke, we finally returned home, exhausted both physically and emotionally. Diana remained in police custody, denied bail due to the severity of the charges and her history of using aliases. Our family celebration had exposed a predator in our midst, but at tremendous cost to our sense of security and trust. The days following Diana's arrest blurred together in a haze of police interviews, legal consultations, and emotional aftershocks. My father retreated into himself, barely speaking, moving through our family home like a ghost. The realization that his wife of 3 years had been systematically plotting against our family and potentially planning his death had shattered something fundamental in him. I took an emergency leave of absence from my research position and temporarily moved back into my childhood bedroom to support him. Each morning, I'd find him already awake, staring vacantly at old family photos from before Mom died, before Diana entered our lives. "I keep trying to pinpoint the moment I should have known," he confessed one morning over untouched breakfast. "There must have been signs I missed." Diana was a practiced manipulator, I reminded him gently. She'd done this before. You couldn't have known. But the self-recrimination continued. Dad stopped going to his engineering firm, delegating projects to his partners indefinitely. He lost weight, his clothes hanging loosely on his frame, and often went days without shaving. Logan and Abigail visited daily, bringing food and attempting to engage Dad in conversation. Abigail, always practical, took charge of canceling joint credit cards and accounts Dad had shared with Diana, while Logan handled the barrage of calls from extended family and friends who had heard snippets of the scandal through local news. "We should consider family therapy," Logan suggested after a particularly difficult day when Dad had refused to leave his bedroom. "All of us, together. This has affected everyone." I agreed, and despite Dad's initial reluctance, we scheduled sessions with Dr. Jessica Taylor, a therapist specializing in family trauma. In our first session, Dad barely spoke, but by the third meeting, something began to shift. "I feel like such a fool," he finally admitted to Dr. Taylor. "I invited a predator into our lives, into our home. I defended her when Hazel raised concerns. I almost lost my daughter because I was too blind to see what was happening." "Frank," Dr. Taylor said gently, "Diana specifically targeted you because you were grieving. Manipulators like her are experts at identifying vulnerability and exploiting it. Your only mistake was being human, experiencing loss, and wanting connection again." Meanwhile, the legal investigation into Diana continued to uncover disturbing details. Detective Cameron called me to the station to review financial records they'd obtained through warrants. "We've found evidence that Diana has been siphoning money from your father's accounts for months," she explained, showing me transaction records. Small amounts, nothing that would immediately raise alarms, but it adds up to over $80,000. More concerning were the life insurance policies Diana had taken out on my father, with herself as the sole beneficiary. The combined payout would have been over $2 million. "We also found these," Detective Cameron said, sliding a folder across the table. Inside were printouts of searches on my father's computer, all conducted when he would have been at work, presumably by Diana. Undetectable poisons, natural-looking heart attack causes, how to make death look like natural causes. I felt physically ill reviewing the evidence. She was planning to kill him all along. "It appears so," Detective Cameron confirmed. "And based on the timeline of these searches, she'd been planning it almost from the beginning of their marriage." What struck me hardest was the realization that Diana had already been slowly poisoning my father. When his doctor ran comprehensive toxicology tests, they found trace amounts of heavy metals in his system, consistent with long-term, low-dose poisoning. This explained his increasing fatigue, occasional confusion, and digestive issues over the past year, all of which we'd attributed to stress and aging. "Your father is lucky," Dr. Williamson told us during a follow-up appointment. "The levels weren't high enough to cause permanent damage, but over time, they would have led to organ failure that might have appeared natural, especially in a man his age with a stressful job." At home, we discovered Diana's hidden journal in a locked compartment of her writing desk. The detailed entries chronicled her methodical approach to infiltrating our family and her growing frustration with the obstacles to accessing the family wealth, particularly my role as co-trustee of my grandfather's estate. "Frank's daughter continues to be problematic," one entry read. "She watches me too closely and asks too many questions. Frank listens to her more than he should. Need to create distance between them. Perhaps suggests she's becoming unstable from work pressure." Another entry, dated just 2 weeks before the anniversary dinner, was even more chilling. "Acquired are from Gregory. Will test on H at Logan's anniversary. If successful, can suggest she's mixing medications with alcohol, perhaps having a breakdown from work stress. Frank will be distracted by her issues, giving me time to implement next phase." Reading these cold, calculated plans to destroy me psychologically and potentially physically made the reality of our narrow escape impossible to ignore. Had Rebecca not noticed Diana's actions and warned me, who knows what might have happened that night or in the weeks to follow. The investigation expanded as authorities contacted Diana's previous in-laws. The families of her former husbands came forward with similar stories of personality changes, mysterious illnesses, and sudden deaths after Diana entered their lives. Exhumation orders were being considered to test for the same toxins found in my father's system. One afternoon, about 3 weeks after the incident, my father found me in the kitchen preparing dinner. He looked more present than he had since that night, his eyes clearer. "I've been thinking about your mother," he said, sitting at the counter as I chopped vegetables. "About how different she was from Diana. Evelyn never tried to change me or isolate me from you kids. She encouraged our relationships." I put down the knife and gave him my full attention. This was the most he'd spoken about Mom in years. "Diana targeted me because I was grieving," he continued. "She saw my vulnerability and exploited it. But the more I think about it, the more I realize that my unresolved grief is what made me susceptible. I never really processed losing your mother." This admission opened a floodgate of conversations about Mom, grief, and how our family had fractured after her death. Dad and I spent evenings looking through old photo albums, sharing memories I'd thought he'd wanted to forget. For the first time in years, Mom's name became a regular part of our conversations, no longer a painful subject to avoid. Logan joined these discussions when he visited, bringing his own memories and perspectives. "Remember how Mom used to sing off-key while making Sunday breakfast?" he reminisced one evening. "Diana always insisted on quiet mornings. I never realized how much I missed the noise until now." Abigail, who had only known our mother briefly before her illness, listened attentively to these stories, occasionally adding, "That explains where Logan got his habit of," or, "I see that same quality in Hazel." Slowly, our family began to heal, not just from Diana's betrayal, but from the unresolved grief we'd carried for years. Dad started attending a support group for victims of relationship fraud, finding solace in the stories of others who had been similarly deceived. "I'm not the only one who missed the signs," he told me after one meeting. There was a retired detective in the group who was conned by his second wife. If a trained investigator can be fooled, maybe I shouldn't be so hard on myself. As Diana's case progressed through the legal system, more victims connected to her previous identities came forward. The prosecutor informed us that with the mounting evidence, Diana would likely face significant prison time for her crimes spanning multiple states. 6 weeks after the anniversary dinner, Dad ventured back to his engineering firm, starting with half days but gradually resuming his normal schedule. His health improved as the toxins left his system, his color returning and his energy levels increasing. One evening, as we prepared dinner together, something that had become our new routine, Dad paused while setting the table. "You know, Hazel, in a strange way, I'm grateful for what happened." I looked at him in surprise. "Grateful? How so?" "If Diana had succeeded in whatever she planned for you that night, or if she'd continued poisoning me undetected, we might not be here having this conversation. Her actions were horrific, but they brought us back together as a family. They forced us to face the grief we'd been avoiding and to reconnect with each other." There was wisdom in his words, though the path to this insight had been painful beyond measure. As Logan and Abigail arrived for our weekly family dinner, I realized that despite everything, our family bonds had emerged stronger than before. Diana had tried to destroy us, but instead, she had inadvertently forced us to rebuild what we had nearly lost after Mom's death. 6 months after the night that changed everything, we gathered at Logan and Abigail's home for a Saturday afternoon barbecue. The summer air was warm, filled with the scent of grilling food and the sound of casual conversation. Dad stood by the grill with Logan, both wearing ridiculous aprons that read "The Grill Master" and "The Grill Apprentice," laughing as they debated the perfect timing for flipping burgers. The change in my father was remarkable. His posture had straightened, the color had returned to his face, and most importantly, the spark had come back to his eyes. The medical treatments to remove the remaining heavy metals from his system had been successful, and his doctor had recently given him a clean bill of health. "Your father is resilient," Dr. Williamson had told me during his last checkup, "both physically and emotionally. Not everyone recovers this well from what he experienced." I believed that resilience was a family trait we all shared. These past 6 months had tested us in ways we never imagined, but we had emerged stronger, both individually and as a family. Abigail approached me with a glass of lemonade, her free hand resting on her slightly rounded belly. "Your dad seems to be doing so well," she observed, following my gaze. "He is," I agreed. "I think finalizing the divorce and selling the house helped. Too many bad memories in that place." Dad had moved into a bright, modern condo closer to his office, filling it with family photos and mementos that Diana had previously relegated to storage. He'd also resumed playing golf on Sundays and reconnected with friends who had drifted away during his marriage to Diana. Abigail smiled, her eyes twinkling with excitement. "Should we tell everyone our news now, or wait until dessert?" "Now might be perfect," I suggested. "Everyone's relaxed and happy." She nodded and called for attention, standing next to Logan. "We have an announcement to make," she said, her voice quivering slightly with emotion. "Logan and I are expecting twins in January." The backyard erupted in cheers and congratulations. Dad enveloped them both in a tearful hug, whispering something that made Logan laugh and wipe at his eyes. Aunt Heather immediately began discussing nursery themes, while Uncle Warren started calculating college fund requirements. Watching the joy on everyone's faces, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. 6 months ago, I wouldn't have believed this scene possible. The darkness of Diana's betrayal had seemed too overwhelming, the damage to our family too severe. Rebecca, who had become a good friend in the months since the incident, arrived a little late, bringing a homemade apple pie. After her crucial role in exposing Diana, she had quit her server job and returned to school to complete her pharmacy degree, something she'd put on hold years earlier. "Sorry I'm late," she apologized, handing me the pie. Study group ran long. "You're just in time," I assured her. "Logan and Abigail just announced they're having twins." Rebecca's face lit up. "That's wonderful news. Some happiness after everything your family has been through." The legal proceedings against Diana had concluded last month with a comprehensive plea deal. Faced with overwhelming evidence from multiple jurisdictions, she had pleaded guilty to attempted poisoning, fraud, identity theft, and a host of financial crimes. The judge had sentenced her to 20 years in prison without possibility of parole, with additional charges pending in 2 other states regarding the suspicious deaths of her previous husbands. "Have you heard anything more about the exhumations?" Rebecca asked quietly as we moved to the dessert table. "They confirmed traces of the same toxins in both previous husbands," I replied. "The prosecutors are building cases for murder charges, but it's complicated because of the time that's passed." Diana's real identity had finally been confirmed as Margaret Ellen Dawson, born in Nebraska, with a history of petty crimes dating back to her teens. The full extent of her deceptions was still being uncovered, with at least 3 other wealthy older men having narrowly escaped her attention before she targeted my father. The support group Dad joined had been instrumental in his recovery. He'd even started mentoring new members, sharing his experience to help others recognize warning signs he had missed. Next month, he was scheduled to speak at a conference on financial exploitation of older adults, turning his painful experience into an opportunity to help others. "Frank seems to have found a new purpose," Rebecca observed, watching my father laugh with his brother-in-law. "That's not always easy after something like this." "I think helping others has been healing for him," I agreed. "And being involved in Logan and Abigail's pregnancy has given him something positive to focus on." My own healing journey had taken a different path. The trauma of nearly being drugged by someone I should have been able to trust had left me with anxiety and hypervigilance that required professional help to address. Dr. Kimberly Chun, a trauma specialist, had worked with me weekly to process the experience and develop healthier coping mechanisms. "The betrayal within a family creates a unique kind of trauma," Dr. Chun had explained during one session. "It violates our most basic assumptions about safety and trust." Working with Dr. Chun, I'd learned to trust my instincts again, to recognize that my initial suspicions about Diana hadn't been paranoia but legitimate concerns that I should have voiced more forcefully. This realization led me to start a support network for family members who suspected abuse but weren't being believed, providing resources and validation I wished I'd had. As we gathered around the table for dinner, Dad tapped his glass for attention. "Before we eat, I'd like to say something." His voice was steady, his expression serene. A year ago, I wouldn't have believed I could feel this kind of happiness again. What happened with Diana nearly destroyed me, not just physically, but emotionally. He paused, his gaze moving around the table, connecting with each of us. But it also showed me what truly matters. Family. Not just by blood, but the people who stand by you in your darkest moments. He nodded toward Rebecca. People who risk their own safety to protect yours, even when they barely know you. The past year has taught me that while we can't always prevent betrayal or pain, we can choose how we respond to it. We can let it break us, or we can use it to become stronger, more compassionate, and more appreciative of the genuine relationships in our lives. He raised his glass. To family, to new beginnings, and to the wisdom that sometimes comes only through suffering. We all raised our glasses, the moment solemn yet hopeful. As conversation resumed and plates were passed around, I reflected on how profoundly our lives had changed since that anniversary dinner 6 months ago. Diana had entered our lives as a predator, calculated and cruel, intending to destroy our family for financial gain. Instead, her actions had ultimately led us back to each other, healing rifts that had formed after Mom's death and creating new bonds of trust and understanding. The investigation into Diana's past had uncovered a pattern of behavior spanning decades. The police believed she had targeted at least 7 wealthy individuals, successfully marrying 3, with my father being her latest victim. 2 had died under suspicious circumstances, while 1 had escaped when family members intervened, much as I had done. What struck me most about these cases was how isolation had been Diana's primary tactic. In each instance, she had systematically separated her victims from family members who might notice changes in behavior or health. With my father, her attempts to drive wedges between him and his children had ultimately been her undoing. This realization reinforced the importance of maintaining strong family connections as a protection against those who would exploit vulnerability. It wasn't just about being physically present, but emotionally available, willing to have difficult conversations when necessary. As the evening progressed, I found myself sitting next to Dad on the patio swing, watching Logan and Abigail receive parenting advice from Uncle Warren, who was demonstrating diaper-changing techniques on a stuffed bear with comical seriousness. "I've been thinking about your mother a lot lately," Dad said quietly. "About what she would think of all this." "She'd be proud of how we've handled it," I replied. "Especially you, Dad. You've shown incredible strength." He smiled, a genuine expression that reached his eyes. "You know what Evelyn used to say about difficult times? Pay attention to who helps you rebuild when your world falls apart. Those are your people." His words resonated deeply. Throughout this ordeal, we had discovered who our people truly were, strengthening those bonds while learning to be more discerning about who we allowed into our inner circle. As we prepare to welcome Logan and Abigail's twins in a few months, our family continues to heal and grow stronger. The shadows of Diana's betrayal haven't disappeared completely, but they no longer dominate our lives. Instead, they serve as a reminder of our resilience and the power of authentic connection. What happened that night at Vincent's restaurant could have torn our family apart permanently. Instead, it became the catalyst for rebuilding something stronger, more honest, and more deeply connected than what existed before. Sometimes the greatest gifts come disguised as our most painful experiences, teaching us lessons we couldn't have learned any other way. Have you ever experienced a situation where your instincts warned you about someone, but you ignored the feeling? What helped you learn to trust yourself again? Share your experiences in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. Remember, sometimes the most important voice to listen to is the quiet one inside yourself that whispers something isn't right. Thank you for joining me for this chapter of my life, and I wish you the wisdom to recognize both the Dianas and the Rebeccas in your own journey.